Well, hello and welcome back to another video. Today it's a very cold morning and we're going over the Andy Anderson board, so let's get straight into it. Right, so for those of you that don't know, the Andy Anderson boards are so much different to the regular shape of skateboard that they're worth their own video. I've skated 3 of these in the past, so I haven't just skated this for a couple days and decided to make this video. I've spent many hours on the Anderson shape. Now the main difference between this and a normal popsicle board is the fact that the nose and the tail are so different. On a popsicle board, you might get a slightly larger nose than you do tail, but the differences really do end there on a popsicle board. This one has so many different concave quirks and little bits that poke out here and there, as well as different cutout angles on the tail that are specifically designed for certain tricks and literally engineered to be the best skateboard it can possibly be for the way that Andy Anderson skates, which is very similar to mine. So me and this board, we get along quite well. But there is one key takeaway that makes this board almost unusable for an everyday driver. So the main difference we're going to go over in this video is the pricing. Now a normal skateboard deck is going to set you back about $50 to $60. This bad boy in England is going to cost you £120. Now that's about $140, maybe $150 in US currency. And if you can afford to have every deck costing that much, and bear in mind, that's not including the trucks and wheels for anyone that didn't know, that is literally just the wooden part, nothing else, not even the grip tape. So if you're adding grip tape on, you can add another $15 on for that. So we're thinking just for the deck, this is going to cost $160. If you're going through one of these once a month, like I would, that's going to cost you the better part of $2,000 per year just for your decks, which is ridiculous. Now you're thinking that, okay, it does cost a bit extra, but obviously it's got some benefits to justify this pricing, right? Well, let's go over those now. So the benefits, obviously we're paying $150 for a deck. We want to know exactly why it's so good. It's supposedly unsnappable. It has carbon fiber sheets throughout the middle of it. So not only does that make it lighter than your average wooden board, it actually makes it way more durable. And having lighter and more durable don't often go together, so you can see why you might pay a premium for that. Although the fact that it's lighter is actually detrimental in certain other areas, which we'll go over in a second. But first of all, I want to talk about how they've made it lighter. First of all, your normal skateboard deck is 7 plies. This one is only 5. The plies are sheets of wood stacked on top of each other. A normal board, like I said, has 7. This one only has 5, and that includes the carbon fiber sheets in the middle as well. So already there's less wood, but the carbon fiber does make it essentially unsnappable, but I'm going to put that to the test after I finish skating this one for a future video. If you want to see that one, make sure you subscribe and let me know in the comments. Now let's talk about the shape that's cut out, because that is probably my favorite part of this entire board. So I'm not going to go over the shape too in depth, because Braille did a fantastic video on what exactly each dent and each section means. So I'll link that one in the description if you want to check that out after this one. But basically what it is instead of having just a regular rounded tail, here we've got sort of like a hexagonal shape where it comes to a dip here, straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line. So there's like 5 straight line sections at the back that each have their own purpose. Now to have your foot in the middle is going to be your standard pop for a straight trick. To have your foot here is going to be for a tray flip, and if you want to do something like a pop shove it or a varial, you're going to have your feet in these sections. So it's a great way to identify where your feet on the board, and they've made it slightly more winged and concaved here to balance out the weight so that one side isn't any more heavy than the other, so that when you flip the board and when you spin the board, it's not going to go off in a random direction because one side weighs more than the other. It's always going to stay consistent like that. Now the actual deck itself, this is the Andy Anderson Series 1, which you'll notice has the hexagonal tail shape, but it has more of a like squared off shovel nose. The Andy Anderson Series 2, which I'm going to be buying one of later next week for a review as well, has this side on both sides, so it's twin tail, so you don't really notice if you've got the board the right way around or not. The annoying thing about this shape is, yeah, it's great to pop tricks off here, but say I've just done a pop shove it and my board's facing this way and I'm riding this way, now I'm popping off this. So my pops aren't going to be as consistent once I've spun the board around, if I'm going to be predominantly relying on these to help me find out where my trick are, because this side is not the same, which is a great benefit of the Series 2. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a future video, but now let's get on to the negatives of the shape. Oh, before we actually move on, one more positive of the shape is the fact that it has wings on here and here. They're perfectly leveled out so that when you sit in primo, you don't wobble and it's really stable. So it is actually a really good board for freestyle. And one further thing I will mention as well, having the flat bits on the tail and the nose means that when you want to do pogos, truck stands or whatever, it won't chip as easily, and it's also much easier to balance on something that's got a square bottom rather than if you were using a normal board and you had to balance on a rounded corner. It's going to be a lot more difficult. But anyway, on to the negatives. All right, so one thing I have noticed with these boards is because they do have 5 plies instead of 7, the Razer Tail comes so much stronger and it's way quicker to take over. For those of you that don't know, Razer Tail is when you're doing a manual and you might hit the tail on the floor causing it to rub against the concrete like that, which in turn slowly wears it down. And the more you wear it down, the less consistent it's going to be to pop from, because you're not going to have as much wood there as you might have had at the start of the board. And for me, someone who likes to do a lot of manuals, the Razer Tail is something I have to actively try and stop every time. Obviously, I know you can put a tail blocker on the bottom of your board. While it might stop you from getting Razer Tail, it's going to be a little bit of an issue when you try and pop certain tricks. Now, it's not going to be an issue for every trick, but if you're so used to popping off the ground without a tail stopper, it might take a little bit of adapting to get used to it. So that part of the board isn't a game changer, but I feel like if I'm paying so much for a board, I don't want to be changing it so often. The number one reason I change my boards is because of Razer Tail. So if I'm changing my boards more often because of the Razer Tail, it doesn't really matter about all the other cool stuff on the board. While it is good while I'm skating it, if I'm still going to be changing it just as often and not getting any extra life out of my board, then I think the Razer Tail is a big off-putter for me, and that's the main reason why I wouldn't skate one of these full time. So the Andy Anderson board, should you get yourself one? Definitely to try. Is it a daily driver? Probably not at that price. Despite what I've said in this video, Andy Anderson is still my favorite skateboarder. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.